Live from Liverpool, we need to talk about ghosts with Kevin Eustace.
Well, welcome back. It is indeed time for the Sunday sermon. I hope that you've all been as splendid as a donkey who is surrounded by other donkeys who really like him. Yes. I do hope you've been well, though. It is absolutely boiling here in the good old U of K. It sincerely is. And if there's one thing I dislike more than heat, it's heat. It's absolutely sweltering. I very rarely wear shorts for two reasons. One, I look like an egg with two cocktail sticks pushed into its bum. But yeah, I don't normally wear shorts. It's not a very flattering look on me, shall I say. However, here I am recording, donning shorts like I'm some sort of AC/DC guitarist. So yeah, I hope the weather's as good as this, because most people like the sun, don't they? And heat and sunburn and tanning and all that. I personally don't. But I hope if it is sunny, you like it. Anyway, enough weather chat. Don't forget, send your stories in to contact@talkaboutghosts.com and I will read them out. I did put a shout out for some stories, and my God, you replied in your droves. So thank you very much. I literally have a plethora. I get to use the word plethora of stories, which is fantastic. So thank you very much. But that said, if you're sat on an amazing story, do send it in, because that's how the show runs. I know I say this each and every week, but it literally is how the show runs. And without the stories, it's nothing. It is zero. It is zilch. It's an amoeba. So thank you for sending your stories in. My voice is a little bit gone because myself and Bekah yesterday recorded a 45-minute Patreon episode, which is going to go out today. All about not looking at the future, all about premonition and precognition and precognitive dreams and stuff. 45 minutes, we just rambled. And if you want to listen to that, of course, you need to become a Patreon. You can do that by going and signing up at patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts. There's also a link in the show notes of this episode. But if you want to hear that, you need to go and sign up. Yes, you do. We put out 2 extra episodes per week over on Patreon, one after this show and one after whatever we put out on a Wednesday. And of course, Wednesdays moving forward will just be we don't need to talk about ghost episodes, where me and Bekah just ramble for a bit. And that's because the other podcast that I have now released, I've set it free into the ether like a father and son. Called The Dark Paranormal, which is a very serious one. There's no silly voices. There's no jokes. If you listen to this for the first time, you're thinking, I'm not going to enjoy this. This guy sounds like a bell end. Go and listen to that show, because it's just a ghost story. Sent in by listeners to this address, to the contact@talkaboutghost.com address, but ones I've just put to one side and thought, they could do with their own show, really. So go and search for The Dark Paranormal and subscribe to it, because it will no longer feature on this show. And I'll be saying that for the next few weeks to make sure you get the message, baby. Anyway, on the subject of Patreon, we do need to say hello, welcome, and thank you to some new patrons. Because don't forget, you get your name sung out if you become a patron, on top of all the free content. Oh my God. Anyway, the guitar's out. There it is, as proof. And I thought, I've been listening to a lot of like mid-90s English indie, so I thought we're going to sing a song for our new patrons in that style. And our 2 new patrons are called, I've lost the list. Hold on. There's only 2 as well, but have I forgot it? How dare I? Taryn McKenna and Christy Ray. So thank you two. And I forgot the names, but I still need to make a song up. I know what I'm playing chord-wise. Let's just see how we go. So Taryn McKenna and Christy Ray. Here we go. Oh, dropped it. Taryn McKenna, Christy Ray, I want to say thank you for signing up to Patreon today. It wasn't today, but you get the gist. Taryn McKenna and Christy Ray, I want to say thank you for signing up to Patreon today. Patreon today, oh it wasn't today, it was through the week. Hence the fact that I'm singing this at the weekend. Ended on a 7th. Whew, God, I just about got through that, didn't I? Anyway, put the guitar down safely. There we go. If you... just literally said safely and then I drop it. If you would like me to sing your name in a song, you need to go and sign up to Patreon, where you will get all the exclusive extra episodes, and today a 45-minute conversation with me and Bekah arguing the toss about precognitive dreams. Yes, go over to patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts, or click the link in the show notes. Now, it's time for Week in Weird, and you may be one of the many, a plethora of people who sent me this particular link to discuss today because it happened in my hometown.
Week in Weird.
Yes, it's time for Week in Weird, and as I say, this one took place in my very hometown. Well, just outside in a place called Ainsdale. Now, basically what's happened is a monster has washed up on the local beach, on Ainsdale Beach, where I used to go as a little child. A little child. Yes. But it's a carcass, like a rotted carcass of an animal that no one knows what it is. So this rancid carcass has turned up, and it's 15 feet long. And it's been dubbed the Ainsdale Anomaly, washing up on the Merseyside beach. And this is taken from the Metro, but it's been all over the UK in the papers. So it was spotted on Wednesday of last week, and many have speculated about the beast's origins, with some saying it's a washed up whale, a woolly mammoth, or even an alien. The fur-covered creature was found on the beach and is without an identifiable head, but looks to have 4 flippers. However, it's deeply decomposed. Somebody said it's very bizarre. It's like a mishmash of different things. And this is the best description I think I've found for it. A woman who's seen it says, it's 15 feet long, it has flippers, it's furry, and it seems to have another creature attached, possibly via an umbilical cord. It was almost like a whale had eaten a horse after that horse has eaten a dolphin. Bom, bom, bom. Anyway, but the mystery, I am sad to say, it's no longer an anomaly. It has been resolved. The rotted carcass that kept Merseysiders wondering for the last week has been identified as a type of whale. Sadly, it died in the sea and just washed up ashore. But we could have had our own monster, and we didn't quite get there yet. I still have hope that one day Nessie himself, or herself, or theirself, however they wish to identify, of course, will climb aboard a boat or a paddle steamer in Loch Ness and say, "You're right, children," in a Scottish accent. And everyone will go, "Good God, we do indeed have monsters and cryptids we never knew about." But until that day, we only have this dead whale, and no Merseyside monster. Sad but true, as Metallica would say. Anyway, guys, that's it for this week's Week in Weird.
Week in Weird.
And we are back. And just to say, guys, thinking about it, I need to let you know, stick around at the end, for we will be playing a promo by the two lovely ladies over at the Ghost Trail series. So listen out for that one, because it's a cracking little YouTube series. Yes, it is. Anyway, let's get to your scary stories. Now, our first email today came in from our good friend Jay over in Oz. And he says, this isn't necessarily ghostly, so I'm not going to read it out. Anyway, our second email, I'm not joking, but he says it is paranormal. Now, as always, I tend not to pre-read these so you get my full and true reaction. So let's read out Jay's email together. And by together, I mean I'm going to read it out and you're going to listen. But you get the gist. So this is the email from Jay. Hi, Kevin Bekah. Hi. Congrats on the new Dark Tales podcast. Dark paranormal, Jay. Get it right. I'm joking. I know that's what you mean. You are really going from strength to strength. Aw. It's great you're doing what you love, and that's a very positive inspiration. Well, to some maybe, Jay. I have one more story for you, but I'm not sure where it sits. I'll let you decide, but a long while back on the regular podcast, you mentioned UFOs, and this story falls into that category. So there you go. This is a UFO story from Jay. How very strange, how very unique for our ghost podcast, a UFO story. Well, let's give it a go. I spent the first few years of my life in a very small country town. Maybe at that time it was a couple of thousand people in population. It was one of those places where everybody went to church on Sunday. Kids could ride their bicycles to school, and everywhere else, and the whole town was in bed by about 10 o'clock at night. The sort of place where everybody knows each other. There wasn't really a lot happening. The most remarkable part of the whole town was there was a small Air Force base just outside of the town, so often you would see huge troop carriers and jets flying overhead to land at the base. You would regularly see these in the sky, army planes, that you wouldn't normally see flying that low over a city. So my experience happened when I was about 10 years old, one very hot, very still summer night. My bedroom was at the front of the house and there was a row of windows on the front and side of the room, and they were all open that night because it was so hot. I remember waking up because I was hot and saw on the roof of my room the shadows moving from a very bright light outside. I have no idea what time this was because I was about 10 years of age and had gone to bed about 8 p.m, my usual bedtime, and had just woken up for no reason other than it being hot. The rest of the house and street was in darkness, so I know it must have been after 10 p.m. At first I thought it might have been a car passing in the street, and it was the light from the headlights of the car. I lay in bed and looked at the shadows moving on the ceiling. Instead of the lights moving or getting dimmer, it seemed like the light from outside that was shining into the room was getting brighter. The shadows were moving sideways like a car going past, but sort of moving along the wall in a slowly moving down movement. I couldn't hear a car engine or any sound at all actually, so I stood up on my bed and half hung out of my window. Where was this light coming from? I saw in the clear sky a very bright round light. It seemed to me like it was the size, but not the shape, of a small car. It was slowly coming down and it seemed to me it was getting dimmer, but I still couldn't see any definite shape, just this ball of light. As it came closer to the ground, it looked to me like it was getting smaller. There was overhead power lines on the street outside and the light passed through them. And this time the ball of light was getting smaller and dimmer. We had a row of 4 pine trees out in front of our house and a grass pavement. One of the pine trees obscured the light, but I could still see it through the pine tree, and it was getting closer and closer to the ground. It was now about the size of a basketball, and not that bright as it started out, but still bright enough that I could see it through the pine tree, and there were shadows from the power poles and cars parked on the street being cast on the houses across the road. I was watching it like I was frozen, but was actually intensely concentrating more likely, and suddenly all I could taste was dry dust in my mouth and I coughed. Not that loudly, but the light shot up into the sky, so quick that 1 second it was almost on the ground and the next it was so far away in the sky it was almost as tiny as a star, and the next second it was gone. Whilst it was moving away so quickly though, it did get bigger and brighter again, but still smaller because it was moving further and further away. Seconds don't sound like a long time, but it was long enough for this thing to move, grow and disappear. It certainly wasn't minutes, and I've never seen anything move that fast and silently ever again in my life. It was like 1 second it was there, 2 seconds later had moved about 50 miles away. Being a young kid, I just lay down and went back to sleep. The show was over. I didn't mention it in the next day to my parents because I thought I might be in trouble for being awake in the middle of the night. When I went to school, I only mentioned it to my best friend, who lived 1 street away from me. He said it was a shooting star, but I said no, because it went back up again. That was it. We started playing a game and I didn't talk about it again. I don't know what it was and didn't have the imagination or language to go any further with my story. The next day, my friend told me that he told his older brother, who said it was something from the airbase. Apparently, my friend had also seen the light, but he said it was way out of town. When I told him it came down just at the front of my house, he said I was lying and punched me. Bloody hell. With friends like that, eh? With friends like that, Jay. Honest to God. Hey, does your UFO? Well, there's no need for that. I say. That afternoon, after school, he came over to my house and I showed him where the light had come down, and we were standing out on the grass pavement, and my mother shouted at us and told us to get in the yard. I would say that would have been the end of the story, except one day, I came home from school and was riding my bicycle down the street. I could see this car parked in the street in front of our house, and these men standing out the front of our house in the grassy pavement. They were in suits, which immediately stood out, as no one wore suits in my town, and they were just stood there looking at the ground, like they'd lost something. I could tell they were from the airbase, from their fancy car, and because I didn't know who they were. like how you know everyone in a small town. So I kept on riding, as if I didn't live there, and rode further down the street a bit. After they got in the car and drove away, I went home and said to my mother, "Who were those men in the front of our house?" She said she didn't see any men, and when I said maybe it was because of the UFO, she said stop talking rubbish, and she would belt me if I was going to tell lies. I never mentioned it again, not even over the next few weeks, when the patch of grass where it landed slowly died on the grass pavement out of the front of our house, and the only thing that ever grew there again were prickleweeds and bindi eyes, in brackets another type of prickle grass. But it was mostly just a bare dusty patch of earth. The pine tree all died on one side, and my father said it had blight, and he cut it down and cut all the pine trees down because they probably had it too. I've never had any validation from anyone else that this happened. I never talked about it again with my best friend nor anyone else. No one in my family ever said to me they saw anything, and clearly I can't ask anyone from the airbase. I can remember it as if it happened yesterday, but like most ghost stories, I seem to be the only one that knows or experienced anything. So that's my story, and I can't really add any more. The whole thing lasted maybe 5 minutes at most. It was a long time ago, but I'll remember it for the rest of my life. Ooer, Jay, now that is a UFO story on a ghost podcast. What? Check yourself before you wreck your pants, Kevin. Anyway, Jay, that's fantastic. Thank you for sending that in. At first, I thought it could have been ball lightning. And I still think it could possibly be that, because I think science has said ball lightning exists, like a glowing ball of plasma that can move through walls when there's a storm about. And it can move freely and slowly and quickly and all that. So it still could be that, actually. But I don't think they've ever caught footage of ball lightning. So maybe you, sir, you, Jay, have seen something exceptionally rare that very few people in the world get to see. And if not, you've seen a UFO, which everybody gets to see. I joke, of course. But thank you, Jay. What a submission. Now let's have another. And this is a ghost story. Yes, it is. And this comes in from Vicky. Hey, Kev. Hi. Hope you and Bekah are well. Yes, we are. Are you, Bekah?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
Your voice seems different.
I know.
Anyway, and this is Vicky's story. The first encounter took place in my parents' house in the early 90s when I was a toddler. The house is an old terrace house built for the workers of an old mine, the colliery which sits directly behind the house. When the colliery closed, the land was covered over as playing fields and a football pitch. The house is pre-1900, a small 2-up, 2-down property. My parents bought the house from my grandparents, and my dad spent part of his childhood there. One evening, when I was around 2, my parents had an argument, and my mum decided to sleep in the bedroom with me. She woke up in the middle of the night to find the bedroom door wide open, and a man in an old smoker's jacket and nightcap, in brackets, think Jim Carrey's animated Scrooge, stood in the doorway. My parents leave their hall light on at night for toilet trips, so she could see him clearly. The man moved to the side of the bed before disappearing. When I found out about this a few years ago, I still lived in the house with my parents. I asked my mum again recently if she'd had any spooky little kid stories, in brackets, talking to people who aren't there and the like. And it turns out that she omitted one important detail from the original telling, as she didn't want to scare me. Originally, she told me I had slept through the entire apparition. Now I don't live there. She told me when she woke up and saw the man in the doorway, I began to stare. I sat up, looked at her, and said, "Don't worry, Mummy, he never says anything. He'll go soon." I was always terrified of being upstairs in the house, and hated being in my bedroom. I slept on top of the covers on my parents' bed, in brackets, like a little dog, until I was 4. And I'm now clear that part of that was motivated by my mum, who didn't want to leave me in there alone. My dad is closed off to all paranormal activity and has never seen or experienced anything in the house. When I was younger, I always felt like if I walked past the foot of the stairs and the upstairs landing light was off, that I could see a dark figure moving down the stairs towards me. It's so vivid I can picture it now. A few years later, one of the adults in the family let it slip in front of me that someone had once fallen down the stairs and died in the years before my grandparents lived there. And to wrap up, when I was about 11 and my sister 7, my parents swapped rooms with us so we would have more space. One evening, my sister fell asleep on the sofa. My dad carried her to bed with me trailing behind. As we walk past the doorway of the old bedroom, my sister starts to struggle against being carried. When my dad put her down, she bolts back down the hallway to the bedroom door, demanding to know where the man in the top hat had just gone. Dun dun dun. Oh my lord, that is petrifying. And I think the doubly petrifying bit is when your mum said that you stared and went, "Don't worry, mummy, he never says anything and disappears shortly. Night." What? Priest, please, double entendres. Oh my lord. But she continues with the email, because apparently that email has been sent to a few podcasts, but the part in red that Vicky's added on is just for us guys. And she continues, I've always associated the idea of hauntings with there being replayings or associations with past events, so I always assumed new buildings were free of that sort of energy and the potential to have ghosts. But I've been woken up a couple of times recently in my new home, a new build. Once with the distinct sound of someone moving around the room, and once with the noise of rustling papers, in brackets, but there were no loose papers in the room at the time. Both times the noise ceased after I opened my eyes, but of course it was dark. Most recently, I was in bed and woke up because I felt and heard some sort of tapping, someone tapping their hands on the bed sheets, almost as if they were trying to pop the air out from under the covers after you've shaken them to make your bed. In brackets, I had my knees raised in my sleep, sort of the position you'd be in if you were balancing a book on your legs whilst lying in bed. I lay there for a few minutes, wide awake, wondering what the hell was going on, then felt and heard a hand placed down quite firmly on the covers again, after which it didn't happen again and I managed to get back to sleep. I'm not sure what to think about this, as I have no other experiences in the house. As always, love the show, Vicky. Wow, Vicky. Tell you what, thank you for the updated part of that email as well, because it sounds like you, madam, have brought something with you to your new abode. I don't wish to freak you out. I do a bit. But that is terrifying. Yeah. You know what? The other night in our house, basically, we've got the neighbour's cat, haven't we, that keeps popping in and being a nuisance. But when the neighbour's cat, if it gets in of a night, of course, jumps on the bed, you can feel it like go weighty. And it's always on Bekah's side of the bed. Yet the other night, there was a heavy weight, like I clapped then in case you wonder what the noise was. There was a heavy weight, boom, like sat on the end of my side of the bed, so much so that I like shot up and looked, nothing there. And I thought, was that the cat, the neighbour's cat, jumping off the bed? But then the neighbour's cat lifted its head up from Bekah's side of the bed as in to say, me, governor, I was fast asleep, governor. 'Twas nothing to do with I. So yeah, I wonder what that was. Could we be having a recurrence of some spooky activity in the apartment? Maybe we will. Maybe we will. Anyway, Vicky, thank you very much for your email. It takes us very nicely into a rather late midpoint. When it's the midpoint, a midpoint is then disco party. Yes, I threw in a bit of German midpoint for all you midpoint lovers out there. How are you guys? I hope that you're all well. Can I just say, if no one if someone is listening to this and has not yet gone and joined the Facebook group, you should do, because it's such a lovely group of people. Everyone's very, very nice. I like to think of it as the most inclusive ghost Facebook group in history. Of course, it's not. Everybody's very nice in other groups too. But please come and join. You go to facebook.com/talkaboutghosts. Speaking of talk about ghosts in its own little world, the website, of course, www.talkaboutghosts.com. Next week, myself and Bekah are going to spend a lot of time trying to suss out how to get the merch part of it up and running. And the reason for that is we promised people we're going to have signed copies of the book available, and we need to sort out how you go about doing that. So hopefully by a week today, next Sunday, when I'm next speaking to you fully about ghosts, we should have some sort of shop up and run. How exciting, eh? Probably won't be, because I tried it about a week ago and I lost my rag. I threw a cup. I didn't really throw a cup. I like to think I threw a cup. I'm not that violent. I imagined throwing a cup. It bounced off an elephant's head. The elephant went wild in the town. So none of these things happened. But hopefully a week today, we will have a store, a merch store. Can you imagine it? T-shirts, books, etc. rhinos. They're extinct. No, they're not extinct, you knob. But you know what I mean. There'll be a shop with plentiful stuff in there. Any other news to tell you about that of any sort of note? No, I don't think there is. As I say, stick around at the end, for we will be playing a promo for the Ghost Trails. I keep getting it wrong. The Ghost Trail series. Is it the Ghost Trail series? You know what? I'm going to make sure to get this right, because I've called it many things. I said to Bekah, oh, I'm doing a shout out for, it is the Ghost Trail series. It just doesn't sound right when I say it. For the Ghost Trail series, which is a YouTube series. It's very good. I've watched it. It's very good. But that'll be on at the end of this show. Yes, indeed. Anyway, should we get back to more spook?
Yes, I think we should.
Thank you, Kevin. You're welcome, Kevin. And we are back with the list of behaviours. Our next email comes in from our oftentimes contributor, tripping over my words today, Lucy White. Now, within the title of her email is the word synchronicity, and I bloody love synchronicities. I sincerely do. In fact, before I tell you about Lucy's story, has anyone seen this Randonautica app? Randonautica. You should check it out. I won't say any more. Just have a search for Randonautica. And if you're going to do it in a group. In fact, I'm going to have to tell you now, aren't I? Basically, Randonautica is an app, and anyone who does it are called randonauts. Yeah, it's like an astronaut, but without the talent. So basically, what you're meant to do is you're meant to focus a question in your mind. You load the app up, and you think like, say, will I ever grow a third leg? And then you think it and think it and think it, and you press a button on this app. And what it weirdly does is it generates coordinates by where you live. And the idea is you walk to that coordinate and walk back, or drive, or pogo stick, or ride a camel. You go there basically and come back. And on your journey, you're going to see a synchronicity that will let you know the answer to the question that you've been thinking, is the idea behind it. If you look at it, seriously, put in Randonautica and then click on news, and you'll see a load of really weird news stories where like people have come across dead bodies. God, I don't know why though. They keep saying this, like, man uses Randonautica app, comes across dead body. It's like, well, if we're trying to imply that therefore this app works, what was his intent? What was his question? Can I please find a dead body? Can I please find a dead body? Because if it was, this guy needs locking up, surely. So yeah, unless he's like, please show me a sign of how my relationship's going. It's like, oh, it's a dead body. Oh dear, I think I should leave. Anyway, check it out, Randonautica. Now, back to Lucy's story. So, she says, hi, Kevin Beck. Here's a weird synchronicity for you. And I love synchronicities, so let's listen to it. My mum Hilary told me this very matter-of-factly the day this happened. My Auntie Susan's funeral was in February this year in Broadstairs, and my mum was unfortunately not well enough to go and was very upset about not being able to go to her big sister's ceremony. The night before the funeral, Mum charged her phone as usual, and the morning of the funeral she woke up and went to check it. It would not turn on. She put it on charge again. Afterwards, it finally turned on, and it started up to the white screen with the Apple logo. It then went straight to her contacts page, which was unusual, as if she was about to phone someone. It was Susan Hindmarsh, her sister's contact. She has never called from that phone and had forgotten she even had her sister's mobile number on her account. As Auntie Susan had dementia for the last 7 years and had been in a home for the last 4 years, so Mum has only ever called her home to speak to her via her husband or the care home via that phone, not ever her mobile number. We think it was Auntie Susan saying goodbye. How cool is that? I think that's bloody amazingly cool, and I completely agree. I do think that. I'm getting to believe more and more in the affecting of electrical equipment from the other side, or indeed by just the world itself trying to give you a nudge. I genuinely am. Did I tell you, get onto this, how weird's this? This was about, say, 6 years ago. And ironically, it's not ironic at all, but I don't know whether I've still got this book. Anyway, I was in an Oxfam looking at second-hand books, as I tend to do. And I was looking up and down, and this one book, this very, very small little book, was like hidden back, recessed within the shelf of this like 84 shelf bookstore. And I was like, and I was drew to it, and I pulled it out. And the book was called, I think it was called Godwinks. Very short little book. But the basics of I had to buy it, and you'll learn why now. the basic premise of this book was it was saying that the world is full of synchronicities and little coincidences that you should pay attention to, because it's the world or the universe trying to direct your path. And it sounds nonsensical, but it was very strange that I picked this book out because, as I say, it was hidden. It was a very plain book as well, but it was hidden amongst a load of other books. And it said, and it's something that I try and remember now and again, and maybe we should all do it. Maybe you have a story of what they call a God wink. It said these things, when they happen, is God winking at you to say, you should be paying attention to that. And apparently it says that if you start to be more attentive to, and purposefully say to yourself, I'm going to go out my way to try and look for these God winks, apparently you'll see stuff, So should we all have a little go this week? Let's try and look for God winks. Let me know if you have one. Anyway, thank you, Lucy, for your submission, by the way. And let's get back to more spooky stories. Our next email comes in from Shan. I think it's Sian Taylor. In fact, it definitely is, because I'm looking at her name. When I say I think, I'm just hoping that she doesn't say at the end of the story, please don't read my name out. No, she doesn't seem to be. Hooray! So it's from Sian Taylor. And it's called My Story. Hi, Kevin Beck. Hi.
Hi.
Hope you're both good and coping well in lockdown. We're doing okay. I hope you are too. Let me tell you, you've kept me sane whilst working from home over the past 20 weeks. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Sean. Thank you very much. I've had a few experiences over the years and have always been able to rationalise them. But the following set of experiences, I really can't. I've not named the people affected in this, but will just refer to them by a letter. Now, for any of our international listeners, this is Kev speaking now. Hello. We're about to use the word Scouser. And a Scouser is what I am. A Scouser is a person who lives and born and generally resides in the Liverpool area. Okay? So prepare for that word. It's coming in the first paragraph of this story. And this is Sean's story. Being a fellow Scouser like your good selves, I decided some 20 years ago to spread my wings and move to Newcastle to go to university. For my second year there, we had to find our own digs, after living in halls for the first year. Myself and 3 other friends from my course decided to get somewhere together. After searching through what could only be described as absolute shitholes in the main students' area of Newcastle, one of the group, we'll call her G, found out that a friend's dad was renting out a property in a much nicer area, so we all jumped at the chance to view it. Well, we weren't disappointed. The house was bloody gorgeous. A beautiful 3-storey house, roughly 90 years old. We were so excited. We accepted it on the spot, and I bagsied myself a room of my choice there and then. Kev speaking now. A bagsied is a Scouse term that basically means you've claimed it for yourself. Okay? That's what bagsy is. So all you international people, start using the term bagsy. Yeah, so you'd say, for example, if somebody came in and said, right, you can choose any one of these, you'd be like, I bagsy the blue one. And that's how you bagsy something. There you go. You learn something new every day on this show. Fast forward 6 months and I come to move in. I was back 3 weeks earlier than my other flatmates, as I was on the student union freshers team, helping the newbie first years settle into halls and basically getting them hammered for an entire week. My folks drove me up to help me drop off all my kit and for me to show them around my new digs. Well, the feeling going into the property this time was entirely different. It seemed, well, colder and heavier than the first time. My folks stayed the night and headed off home the next day, and there I was, home alone. As I was so busy for the first few days, I never really noticed anything, but after a week or so, I started getting an uneasy feeling on the landing outside my bedroom, leading to the bathroom, and a truly uneasy feeling inside the bathroom, like I was constantly being watched. It was particularly bad when in the shower. I put it down to my overactive imagination, so never really mentioned it to anyone. However, I had a weekend back in Liverpool not long later, and was chatting to my mum, asking her what she thought of the house. She said, nice. Very unlike her. She has an opinion on everything. I just mentioned that I got an uneasy feeling when walking past the bathroom to my room, not expecting at all for my mother dearest to say, well, whatever it is, I don't get the feeling it's going to hurt you. Suffice to say, my bum twitched. Well done. Good expression there. Yeah, if your bum twitches, it means you're scary, you know. I mean, not scary. You are scared. You're scared. Yeah, oh, my bum was twitching. Yes, very good. You can use that as well if you don't use it. Everyone's free to use any terminology. There is no copyrights on words in this show. Well done, though. That made me giggle. My mum is not one for supernatural things and would usually say it's just my imagination, etc. This shook me up big time. I still hadn't mentioned anything to my housemate when we decided to have a little housewarming. Just to give you an idea of the layout, the front door opened into a small vestibule and then into the long narrow hallway, in brackets, 2 doors lead off, one to the living room and one to the other dining room which led to the kitchen. And at the end of the hall were the stairs. Now, my best friend, we'll call her H, came into the house for the first time. In brackets, I need to quickly add that H is very in tune to spiritual things. I saw her eyes drawn to the top of the stairs, where the bathroom door is, and instantly look away. She seemed very uncomfortable. I asked her later that night if she was okay, but she brushed it off. However, a few days later, she said she'd felt massively uncomfortable going up the first flight of stairs and going to the bathroom, and that there was definitely something dark there. She believed there were 2 entities there, one not meaning to cause any harm, but the other was definitely more malevolent. I mentioned, after a few drinks one night, to my flatmates what H and myself both felt and discussed, fully expecting to get laughed at. One flatmate though, we'll call her K, who was a huge skeptic, reliably told me I was being stupid, whereas the others, G and my other housemate, B, both said they'd experienced seeing things or misplacing items, but put it down to forgetfulness or COTEP. Again, just to say, COTEP, as we probably know by now, corner of the eye phenomena. But they both felt like they were being watched when in the shower. Our house soon became the party central, and most of our nights out ended up with everyone back there, so it was rare to not have people staying over, and the house was never empty. One particular morning, I was in bed, suffering of one of my regular hangovers, when I got a knock on my door. It was a friend of G's who had stayed over asking if I had just shouted her. Having been fast asleep, I said no. She explained that she had heard someone shout her name from outside the bathroom, in brackets, my room was next door to the bathroom, so she assumed it was me. She said it was very loud and clearly her name. Well, suffice to say, I shit myself. Surprisingly, she never stayed again. Things definitely heightened over the next 18 months, especially with guests staying in our spare room, asking if anyone had gone into the room overnight as they were sure they'd heard the door open and close, or hearing someone stomping up the stairs, knowing that the only other person on that floor, K, was in her room. One friend said she heard someone constantly going up and down the second flight of stairs all night. Electrical items would perpetually break and lights would blow on a pretty much weekly basis. Towards the end of our time living together, the atmosphere was so bad in the house that we all ended up falling out, in brackets, and we ended up having to have B evicted. By this point, the presence could be felt all throughout the house and definitely could be felt more when there was a lot of negative energy, particularly when we were all stressed finishing our finals/dissertations, and most definitely more apparent in the spare room. It was so uncomfortable at times that I would stay out as often as I could, going and staying at a friend's house or just going out drinking. My boyfriend at the time would leg it into the bathroom anytime he needed it, saying he felt like something was going to grab his ankles. I never told him anything of what we actually experienced. I never actually saw anything full on myself, but would constantly see things out of the corner of my eye, and saying goodbye to the gaff was not the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I often wonder if any of the new tenants felt or saw anything. Sorry if this has been such a long story, hope I've not driveled on too much. I've had other experiences since then, but those stories are for another time. Cheers, Sian. No, send them in immediately, because that was effing terrifying. Oh my god, you know, it was the scariest part of that for me, and I think for anyone listening, because I'm like, who am I to say what scares you? But the running up and down the stairs all night, because I'll tell you why. Do you remember in Halloween of last year when I'd done a series of episodes, and one of those episodes I was interviewing my good friend Mr. Neil Keating, Liverpool illustrator, who done the show logo as well, interestingly. The picture parts, anyway, the words were done by Paul Beveridge. So, just give everyone a shout out there. But Neil told me a story that his dad was working in digs. If you go back and listen to the story, you'll hear it. It's very windy, though, that recording. And he was staying in digs. It was up north somewhere. I don't think it was Newcastle, but it might have been. And he said his dad heard someone running up and down the stairs and up and down the landing. And when they'd open the door, there was no one there. But it was like a ferocious running to the point where his dad, who's a labourer, like put his brick hod against the door just in case this thing tried to smash into the door. Terrifying when you hear something running. It really is. I mean, although it's bright outside and it's like 35 degrees, can I just say, I don't even know what's Celsius or Fahrenheit, but whatever one we use currently, I hate it. I don't know why. I don't think it was out when I was a kid, or it was the trend, but I still use like the bigger one. Fahrenheit, is it? Is it Fahrenheit? I think it's Fahrenheit. So for example, I'd say now that it's like 86 degrees because it is 86 degrees. You know, and Bekah goes, no, I don't understand what that means. What is it? And I'm like, all right, in your language, it's like 27. But mine seems much better. Anyway, that's a side point. What I'm trying to say is it's boiling hot and I'm terrified in the flat after reading that story. Yes, I am. Thankfully, I think the neighbour's cat is about. And if it's not, then there's something scratching at the door. That's all I'm saying. And it's if it's not a cat, I'm going to jump out the effing window. Yes, I am. So if I'm not here next week, if you don't have a show next week, it's because I've splattered on the ground because of a ghost. Oh, my Lord. What a way to go. Anywho, do please send in your ghost stories to contact@talkaboutghosts.com because that's how the show survives. If you would be so kind to go and send it to Patreon, you can help keep the show afloat and just being broadcast, really. And you will, of course, for the privilege of that, you will get loads of extra episodes. As I say, the one I'm about to put up there is 45 minutes worth of me and Bekah arguing about premonitions. And it's very good, funny, and informative. So that's on there. You also get your name sung out by me. Yes, me. So go to www.patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts. It's also a link in the show notes. If you want to go and leave a review, if you don't want to sign up to Patreon, that's absolutely fine. Go and leave a review wherever you get your podcast from. We normally read them out at this point, but I'm going to save it for next week. We'll do a big shout out to everyone. So in the meantime and in between time, I'm going to find out what the frigging hell is scratching at the door, and I will love you all and leave you all and speak to you on Wednesday, where we will not be talking about ghosts. Don't forget, if you want to listen to more spooky, ooky stories, and also I need to say, if you're thinking, I've sent a story into Kev and he's not read it out, there could be a chance I'm reading it out on the other podcast, The Dark Paranormal. So go check out The Dark Paranormal and subscribe there. Okay, guys, take care. I love you all, and I'll speak to you later. Now, don't forget to hang around because we're going to play out with a promo from the lovely girls over at the Ghost Trail series. So listen to that and go watch it because it's very good. I think that's everything. Okay, enjoy your week. Ta-ta, bye.
Hi, I'm Jo.
And I'm Faye, and we've got a question for you.
What has 2 actors, ghost stories, plenty of spooky goings-on, special guests and scary site visits?
And a super cheesy promo.
The answer is The Ghost Trail.
So make a cup of tea and come and join us on YouTube under the Ghost Trail series.
Subscribe, sit back and enjoy our creepy adventures.
The Ghost Trail is presented by Jo Hart and Faye Sewell with original music by Peter Godfrey.